My name is Ava, and I work as a freelance writer. I take on all sorts of jobs, such as local advertisements and web articles, but I can't survive on just writing alone, so I also work part-time at a convenience store. However, recently, I was offered a job from a major publishing company. I was going to write a column in a magazine, but it was still a huge opportunity for me. I was over the moon and started thinking that maybe I could make it as a real writer. However, life was not so easy. The editor-in-chief, William, was a strict and uncompromising person who held very high standards. He would say things like,
"What is this? Anyone could write this. Is this the best you could do?"
"I'm sorry. I'll rewrite it."
"Damn right you will. Listen, there are as many writers like you as there are stars in the sky. Your desperation doesn't come through."
Usually, it took several attempts to get a column approved, and sometimes it took even more. What exactly is wrong with it? If I were to ask that, I would be yelled at with,
"It's your column. It's your job as a writer to think about that. If you don't even understand that, you'll never become a pro."
Despite this, I continued to work hard, sacrificing sleep, while also doing other writing and convenience store jobs. That lifestyle continued for a year. I had faint hope that I might receive another request because it was a job at a major publishing company, but nothing came. Although my column was still ongoing, my lifestyle didn't change as I juggled multiple jobs. Looking back, my mind and body were exhausted, and I may have lacked the ability to make sound judgments. One day, a friend from college invited me to a mixer. Usually, I would have declined, but that day, I had just received a rejection notice for my manuscript and was feeling frustrated, so I decided to participate for a change of pace. Since it was just about getting enough people together, I thought I might as well enjoy some good food and take my mind off things. At the mixer, I was seated next to James, who introduced himself as working for a famous pharmaceutical company that everyone knew about. He seemed interested in the fact that I was working as a writer while also doing part-time jobs.
"It takes courage to be a freelancer and not give up on your dreams, even after graduating from college."
He said so with a smile. Although I felt that something was off, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I had always felt a sense of alienation among people with more conventional career paths. I have big dreams, but really haven't caught up with them yet.
I see. If you don't mind, can I hear more about it? Why don't we go somewhere together next time, just the two of us?
Okay. Are you sure you want to go out with someone like me?
Of course I am.
From that day on, we started dating frequently. James paid for everything, including meals. "You always pay, so let me get this tonight." When I said that, he replied,
"Don't be ridiculous. It's not manly to have a girl pay for it. Besides, I'm financially more stable than you, Ava. It's only natural for me to pay."
"Thank you." Although sometimes his words bothered me, in reality I was barely making ends meet financially, so I started to take his treating me as a matter of course. After eating, we often went back to my apartment, and he would stay the night. He lived with his parents, so I never went to his place.
"Ava, why don't you quit your convenience store job? If you go out at night, I can't come to your house, and we won't be able to have dinner together."
As we finished eating at the restaurant, James said this to me as I was about to go home, because of my job at the convenience store. I felt pathetic relying on him for everything, but I was at my limit trying to balance my job as a writer and my job at the convenience store, so I just accepted his words as they were. "Okay. I'll talk to the manager today about quitting at the end of this month." I quit my job at the convenience store and was able to focus solely on my job as a writer. Thank you, James. I feel like I have a little more room to focus on my writing now.
Being a writer is your dream, so take your time and don't rush.
Although there were still many criticisms of my column in the magazine, I persevered with patience. I was determined to do my best at this job. However, at the same time, I was still in a state of uncertainty about whether I could truly get on my feet as a writer. About 6 months after I started dating James, I became pregnant. There were times when we didn't use contraception. Swayed by James's feelings, so it was a natural result, but I was shaken. I was worried whether he would accept my pregnancy. But surprisingly, he calmly said,
"That's great. I want you to have my child."
"Are you happy that I'm pregnant?"
"Why wouldn't I be? From now on, focus on giving birth to a healthy child and take care of yourself."
"Thank you. We're getting married, right?"
"Marriage? Yeah, then I'll have to let my mother know, I guess."
I was happy that James was delighted about having a child, but his lack of concern about marriage bothered me a little. Nevertheless, when I saw his innocent smile of joy, I thought that he must want to get married.
"Ava, why don't you take a break from work for a while? You don't want it to affect the baby."
"But I still want to continue my column that's currently running."
"You can always work later."
Although I wanted to say that it's not such an easy job, I thought for a moment and replied, "I'll talk to the editor about work. It would be inconvenient to quit immediately." He looked dissatisfied, but quickly changed the subject.
"Can you come to my mom's house this weekend? I want you to meet my mother."
As planned, we went to James's mother's house over the weekend. He lived with his mother, Harper. His parents apparently divorced when he was young. Come to think of it, it was my first time visiting his family. "Nice to meet you. My name is Ava," I said nervously. She then looked me up and down and sat with narrowed eyes.
"So you're Ava. I've heard all about you from my son. Is it true that you're pregnant with James's child?"
"Yes," I replied, wary of Harper's sarcastic tone.
"There's no mistake that it's his child, right?"
James spoke up just as I was taken aback by the unexpected question.
"Please don't be hard on her, Mom. That's definitely my baby." "Well, that's good to hear. By the way, I heard you were working as a writer. Do you plan to quit?"
"It seems James has been talking to Harper about my job. I won't quit right away, but I plan to take maternity leave."
"You should focus on giving birth to a healthy child. You can always work later."
I felt a little uneasy that both the mom and son said the same thing. But at that time, I never imagined that I would have a completely unexpected life after this. Even if I got married and had children, I wanted to keep my dream of becoming a writer. However, despite that desire, I could only do mediocre work at the moment, so maybe both of them thought my job was just a hobby. From then on, they both kept pushing me to quit my job multiple times. Due to the mood swings of pregnancy, I became irritable and couldn't progress with my writing on many days. One day, I visited the publishing house with the manuscript I corrected. I heard voices from the editor-in-chief's office. I was planning to wait a little if they were in a meeting, but I heard unexpected words from William.
"It's about time. It's been a year and a half. Should we switch to a new writer for the column?"
I was stunned. I had worked so hard, but to be ended like this, in the middle of the series, my mind went blank, and I left the place without handing over the manuscript, feeling dizzy. What was the point of the last year and a half? At that moment, William's words that I always hear came back to me.
"There are plenty of people to replace you."
I see they found a replacement. I realized that I couldn't leave much of an impression, and it was the end. A few days later, I was informed that the column in the series was ending. On the same day, I reported my marriage and pregnancy to the editor-in-chief.
"Oh, wow. Congratulations."
"Thank you. So I'm thinking of taking a break from my job as a writer for a while."
"Are you quitting?"
William spoke with a clear tone, as if he could see through my heart. "I don't know, but I'm tired. Not writing as a writer is as good as quitting."
"If that's your decision, there's nothing I can do or say."
"There are as many writers like me as there are stars in the sky, right?"
You're very self-deprecating.
Isn't that what you always tell me? You don't know how much those words hurt me. I knew I was getting emotional, but since today was the last day anyway, I let out the words I had been holding back. I worked hard, too. I did my best until the very end. But the serialization ended. Is it wrong for me to want to get married and have an easier life?
It's your life. You can do what you like.
He sighed loudly and said so. Thank you for everything. I stared straight at him, then lowered my head and quickly left the room. I didn't want him to see my overflowing tears. I put away my dream of becoming a writer. Later, James and I got married. At the same time, Harper bought a newly built house for us. My parents seemed relieved that I got married, even though I didn't have a stable job. With no mortgage on the house, we had financial stability, and I became a full-time housewife without having to work. I was in my second trimester, and I wanted to do my housework and not be lazy. But then James said,
You don't have to do any housework. What if something happens to the baby?
It's okay. Besides, the doctor says it's better to do some exercise.
But I'm worried. I'll have my mother come over and cook for us.
No. I tried to refuse, but he had already called Harper. From then on, she came to our house every day. She tried to do all the housework, so I honestly felt stressed. I can move around just fine, so you don't have to come over every day.
Oh, am I bothering you?
It's not that, but...
It's okay. Just focus on giving birth to a healthy child. Leave James to me.
She said without understanding my feelings. She continued to come every day, and we had meals together at the table.
Your cooking is still the best, Mom. I'll have to go on a business trip from tomorrow, so prepare some underwear and a set for a sleepover, okay, Mom? I know what flavor you like the best. You're going on a business trip. What a busy man you are. I'll prepare them for you, sweetie.
She wants to compete with me in taking care of James. And James, without complaining, actually relies on her for everything. Yes, James was a typical mama's boy. Married life was quite different from what I had imagined. Nevertheless, I was too optimistic, thinking that once the baby was born, he would also focus on the baby and me. When I was in my 35th week, I asked Harper and James if I could go back to my parents' home to give birth. Then she said,
You're being selfish asking to go back to your parents' place when I've done all the housework.
But I'm very nervous about my first childbirth.
Oh, are you saying I'm useless? Ava, Mom says it's okay, so why don't you give birth here? She will help us after the baby's born, too.
I wanted to tell him that it was her that was stressing me out, but that would only make things worse. However, I really wanted my mother to be there for the birth. I chose my words carefully and said what I wanted to say. I'm grateful for what you've done for us, but there are still some things that make me nervous. I want to prepare for childbirth in a relaxed setting, so please allow me to go back home for a while, please.
Fine, do as you please.
Harper spit out those words, turned her face, and went out of the room.
You've made her angry, Ava. You're so stubborn. She bought us a house, and yet you spoke so sharply to her. You better have a healthy baby.
How could you talk to me like that? I tried to talk to him, but he quickly went back to his room without hearing me out. After that bitter argument, I went back to my hometown to give birth. My parents were delighted to have a healthy baby boy, and I was happy to spend time with them and the baby. However, James only visited the hospital to see the baby after the birth and never came to my parents' house. After the baby's 1-month checkup, when I returned home, James looked at me coldly, and he said something unbelievable.
Great job with the baby, but I'm divorcing you.
What do you mean?
I'm disappointed that you prioritized your parents over my mother.
What? I just went home to give birth.
I was the one who saved you, a person with no income. My mother did all the housework during your pregnancy, which allowed you to have a safe delivery without stressing your body. But you ignored our feelings.
Harper took advantage of James's words and said,
Yes, we sold the house, so leave the baby and get out.
Well, this is too sudden. I can't just give up my child.
How are you an unemployed person? going to raise a child. You can't even do housework.
James and I will raise the child. Don't ever come back here again. After Harper snatched the baby from me and James forced me out of the house, I stood there in a daze. I started walking aimlessly, not knowing where to go. The rain started to fall and soaked my body. It was only then that I began to feel emotions welling up inside me, and the tears started to overflow uncontrollably. I had no idea what to do as I walked, unable to return to my parents' house in such a state. Suddenly, a car pulled up next to me, and a man got out. It was William, the editor-in-chief.
Hey, are you okay?
I looked at him with unfocused eyes.
Get in the car. You're soaking wet.
We headed to his house, where I borrowed a warm shower and had my clothes dried. I'm sorry you had to see me in such a pathetic state. I guess this is my punishment for running away from work and getting married, I said, looking down.
Can you tell me what happened?
William asked in the kindest voice I ever heard from him. I told him everything slowly while looking down, how James was extremely attached to his mother and how he took away the baby because of my lack of financial capability. He listened to me in silence, but when I said, "I'm useless, aren't I?" he looked at me with burning eyes.
You did nothing wrong. You were used. That family probably took advantage of your hard-working and earnest personality. You have talent as a writer. Ending the serialization was to promote you to the next project.
What?
I won't let you just cry and give up like this. I have an idea.
I looked at him in surprise. I was criticized many times, and I hated him for that. But it wasn't his real nature. It was just a way to train me as a writer. I was such a fool not to have noticed.
Ava, we'll get your child back, and you'll become a real writer this time.
Yes, I won't make a mistake again. Thank you. Afterwards, William requested the help of a lawyer acquaintance, and we were able to get my baby back. And then we were able to get divorced. As it turns out, James and Harper's goal from the beginning was for me to give birth to their successor. Harper's ex-husband, who was aware of their abnormal relationship, testified to this fact. After I settled down and got my baby back, I began serializing a novel in a literary magazine edited by William. Although I'm still at the beginning of my career as a novelist, I'm gradually getting more work. William and I progressed from partners to lovers, and we now live together. He said he would marry me once my baby turns 1 year old. Although he's a strict editor, he's a really kind person as a boyfriend. I'm truly grateful to him. As for James, he actually had a large amount of debt and was fired from the company after it was discovered that he had used company money. He is currently working at a convenience store while paying back his debt. It's unclear whether Harper is living with him, but it goes without saying that she's become even more hysterical than before.